So you may say it's a planetary science company if you want to use the modern word being described today. Before the company even formed, I was funded by Rockefeller Foundation, which got me started with a bunch of kids, basically, master's students at the National Center for Biological Sciences. Well, I told them that I wanted to build a bridge between academia and industry to drive innovation. You had the Nestle's at your door, you had AstraZeneca for the TB library, you had Danones and the big boys, Limacren, Cipla, Godrej, etc. Seven, we went into IPO mode, and then we used those funds to acquire companies worldwide. We acquired 5 companies.
In terms of business model, who owns the IP in the partnership model, if it all is being created? So biotech usually has a very long gestation cycle, right, as we all know. So what do you think about the financial sustainability while building the long horizon sciences? What is the extent to which this biobank currently in India encapsulates different communities or say different types of individuals? Today's guest represents a rare blend of scientific depth and visionary execution. Dr. Villoo Morawala Patel founded Avesthagen with a singular mission to push Indian biotech beyond genetics and into the realm of original research, genomic intelligence, and breakthrough IP. Thank you so much for doing this. So I'll just start with some questions that I think we all have. Firstly, at a population level, given where we are, how important is genomics for a country like India and how underutilized is it today?
Actually, I mean, I realized the importance of population genetics in 2001 itself, when I said the path to innovation is linked through biodiversity. You know that most people are similar except for that 0.001% that makes us different. So if whether you are bacteria or man or plant, it's the same thing. It's the same story. There's homology between all of us. And so how do you find that difference that contributes to better healthcare, both in prediction, prevention, and precision? How do you innovate? India's biggest strength is its biodiversity. We have variety, color, weave, everything in this diversity. And so I saw that in my mind, I saw that as a basis and of driving change and filling in the blanks, so to speak, to arrive at a better world. I mean, but today, I mean, when I look back this journey of 25 years, there was no response to this. They found the idea very weird in the start, very, very ahead of time. And there was not much response within the country to it for many, many years. But as of 2015, or shall I say post-COVID, dimensions have changed here. I mean, most people have become aware of how important genomics and genetics are to healthcare and how we can basically, bring out better cures, better analytics. The diagnostic industry has burgeoned, and people are getting into it from all angles, all angles. But thorough studies, just recently, the Genomics India began about some years ago, and they've completed 10,000 genomes. Again, the way you go about collecting the sample cohort and the basis on which you are collecting, it's almost like a clinical trial, actually, if you go to speak. You just don't go and collect. You have to have a questionnaire. What are you addressing? Are you addressing the nutrition aspect or the pharmacology aspect? But you need to get all that data in. And most collections even in the world, have been done only at the genetic level or sporadically, then at the transcriptome level or at the level of metabolome or proteome. But no one has actually done a full study, like a cohort study, which you collected for the entire multi-omics platforms, and which is what the Avesta Genome Project is, because what you find at the genome level may not be, it will give you information, but the real story, if you want to drive towards precision medicine, will come at the proteome level, the metabolome level, at the stem cell level, the whole, all the parameters. So in a country like India, people have not thought that huge and big, and so we've seen smaller projects here and there, except for the 10,000 genome, which the country has completed sequencing. But analytics is yet to throw up data and make it, to the next level. But things are happening in various different labs. There are labs also now starting on, as I said, specific studies on specific diseases, looking at the Indian population, like longevity or like, sickle cell anemia or thalassemia. So there are these pockets of work going on today. So if I may say so, that it was post-COVID that people understood the significance of such work and how important it is. Certain projects have been initiated, and it is important for a country like India to come to that question. It is extremely important to give this diverse precision medicine, because as you know, just in the TB case of tuberculosis, there's rampant, people are not anymore able to respond to antibiotics, multi-drug resistance, that was the word I was looking for. So we don't want that to happen on other cases also. Now diabetes has become a scourge, and we have to be very careful what we are prescribing to people. So everywhere, population studies become extremely important.
I also wanted to understand before getting deeper into it. I had a follow-up question, but could we, for the audience, just explain what Avesthagen is doing in different fields? We have, of course, precision medicine, and of course, we have R&D happening on genomics, right? I've heard that there are a bunch of different fields in which you're doing work. If you can just explain what those are, it'll sort of help in better comprehension.
Yeah, sure. Avesthagen, as I mentioned, began as with biodiversity as a basis for innovation. And basically, I drew a boat with 3 sails, and the hull of the boat had multi-omics. I come from that background. My PhD was in cis transplicing RNA editing at University of Strasbourg. Then I did a short postdoc in Ghent in Belgium, and all my work revolved around genomes and what happens in genomes, the RNA editing, a lot of RNA work. And I understood the basis of life in some ways, you may say, from those pieces of work that I did. So when I came back, I said the story is in diversity, like whether it's populations of plants or humans or bacterium or animals. So you may say it's a planetary science company, if you want to use the modern word being described today, planetary sciences.
Yeah.
Avesthagen is and has always been looking at the entire planet Earth and the biodiversity within it, and knocking out information within the diversity, and to create pipelines of prediction, prevention, precision, that driving down pipelines towards the market. In the end, you're doing R&D is R&D, and it is built out of passion and knowledge and vision, and whether you resort to this sector or that sector. And it's all about where you get the funds, because all these visions have to be driven by investments. And so if you look at it, that it's a planetary science company, it has taken the global biodiversity as a basis of innovation using multi-omics, and has driven out maybe 4 pipelines. It's the diagnostic pipeline, the preventive healthcare using traditional medicine, where we validated traditional medicine using pharmaceutical models. We superimpose right from cell-based assays right down to clinical trials. So you give prevention through traditional medicine that has gone through a pharmaceutical process of finding the exact composition at the metabolome level to put into a capsule or a functional food, because we are into functional foods too. And the third one is the pharmaceuticals, and the fourth is agriculture, so climate change agriculture.
Okay.
So in fact,
okay, all right, that's very informative. Thank you so much. Before we start, in 2001 you started off, and again, like I said, R&D is a very capex heavy initiative. So could you help us understand the landscape back in the day when you started? What kind of support did you have, monetary and of course otherwise, with respect to talent pool? How has it changed over the years, and what are the tailwinds for the future?
Yeah. So yeah, of course you need funding. And initially, before the company even formed, I was funded by Rockefeller Foundation. which got me started with a bunch of kids, basically, master's students at the National Center for Biological Sciences, which itself was a startup within the Indian Institute of Science campus.
Okay.
And so we began there, I mean, just as me, and got the funding. And then I told them that I wanted to build a bridge between academia and industry to drive innovation, because I felt there's a lacuna there, there's a space there. And so initial funding as an individual came from Rockefeller Foundation, and that's when I started the company. I mean, I drew up the plan, very brief. 4 of my students, master students, moved with me into the company in 01. We began as such, and then a lot of students joined us. So we were about 15, 20 of us when Avesthagen began, and the first investment came in from ICICI Ventures, which is a big fund in India, and Tata Industries and Global Trust Bank, Dr. Ramesh Gilly. And so what they did was basically bundled up 2 million for me, and with which I bought the first sequencer. And everybody said, what the hell? Why are you blowing up all that money on that first sequencer? And so that was the first sequencer that really arrived into India in many ways. And and we bought the equipment, and we set up at International Tech Park in Whitefield, which was like one of the best places to go to. So always aimed for the best, never gave up on that. The quest was best or nothing, or you just starve, And so basically landed up there and set up the lab. It was the first lab, was around 7,000 square feet. 15, 20 employees, all masters, all kids. And there the story began in 01. And very rapidly it scaled up. I mean, unbelievable. Because of the model, convergence of food, pharma, and population genetics, leading to predictive, preventive, precision healthcare, and food security. Some people thought it was crazy. Some people, found it intriguing.
Yeah.
But I never had problems attracting human resources, and some of the best came in. And over the next 3 years, we raised capital. After that, from non-dilutive funding, around 4 million those days. I also raised partnership funding, which was also a very interesting model. The partnership was we had turned an idea into early research in like from tuberculosis to medicinal plants for diabetes, medicinal plants for bone health, cardiovascular, to climate change, crops, etc., and pharma. So people came in, partners came in, the big boys actually, because they found it intriguing. And so you had the Nestle's at your door, and you had AstraZeneca for the TB library, you had Danons and the big boys, Limagren, Cipla, Godrej, etc. in the next 3 to 4 years, partnering. They want to, actually, when I reflect back, I see it as a partnering. They were, while it was a partnering thing, they were actually learning what this was all about. Because remember, Nestle didn't have Nestle Nutrition those days. So I always say that this whole thing sprung, Nestle Nutrition and healthcare sprung out of Avesthagen when they interacted with Avesthagen as far back as 2002. They became our partners, and the idea grew from there. So jointly we created a bunch of bioactives for diabetes with Danon also, then with Biomeru, a set of diagnostic biomarkers. So we were into AI, ML, you may call it today, but we were already there very heavily those days. We were doing crazy stuff even then. So we saw that the cell wall would be shaken up if we sent a non-edited version. And so that's when we took the gene further, and it's a proven technology today, hybrid fit. So we did real fundamental work, very, very interesting things between 2002 to 2006, 7. Much was born. The group grew up to 350 people, pure scientists, and a few business guys strolling around there from IIT, IIM types, who built my business alliance, who were responsible for the business alliances. So largely a scientific group.
Is it still a partnership model?
So the company went through a huge journey, shall we say. In '07, we raised large grant, to 26, not grant, but investment, private equity, 26 million euros. Those days was big.
Yeah.
And Fidelity and New York Life and Danone, Limagren participated in that round. And then we got the message from all of them that we have to plan the IPO soon. And '07, we went into IPO mode, and then we used those funds to acquire companies worldwide. We acquired 5 companies that gave legs to your innovation. They were manufacturing and marketing companies. So it's been a story of enormous challenge and risk and leapfrogging. And we've done it. We did it.
Yeah.
And of course, nobody saw the 2008 fall of the markets. Just 15 days before we filed for the IPO, we were ready for the IPO, Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch as bankers, and then the markets collapsed. So maintain that whole thing right up to 2012 with the manufacturing, with the markets in all the sectors. And by 13, the markets were just not improving. That's when I shed all the manufacturing and those acquisitions worldwide, and became the model that we were in 2005-6. You would say, preserved all the products, preserved all the IP, and started partnership initiative and cleanup, of course, of the company from that huge stage it has reached. So yeah, we are now back to partnerships, and all of them are being partnered, everything.
Okay. Okay. So, just out of curiosity, in terms of business model, who owns the IP in the partnership model, if at all it's being created?
Okay, the IP generally we retain both sides.
Okay.
Both sides. I mean, that's the model, because I didn't succumb to the services model. I didn't want to. I said, if I go, then there's no way anybody is going to stand strong on innovation. It was just that firm. I got a lot of brickbats for it, that I did do services and could have had general revenue and all that. But those two don't mix, actually. Each one's IP that we bring on the table remains theirs. Joint IP is jointly held. The work. Sometimes, in some cases, you say, oh, you retain it for all diagnostics, and I retain it for drug discovery. These are structures depending on individual companies, but IP shared.
So biotech usually has a very long gestation cycle, right? As we all know. So what do you think about the financial sustainability while building the long horizon sciences? Like, over a long horizon, how do you manage the finances? Because that's I think a preliminary thought before thinking about moving from research to commercialization, right?
You have to basically have a network, self-sustaining network. I mean, there are times of drought in this business. You don't have the money, and that's the time you have to rely on your network. Friends, family, interim financing, bridge financing, ability to sell off something. And that's why the vast model the conglomerate type model I created was linked to the ability to, sometimes shed something if you have to survive. Doesn't matter, because your main goal remains intact. So the fallouts of such a vast model are plenty. So we have products today I can shed without any remorse, shall I say, to a third party, make a sale, bring in the funds to keep my main show on the road.
Is India structurally incentivizing to produce IP-driven biotech companies, or only manufacturing and generics player?
What I have seen from the funding that in India was providing to date was very specific to one project.
Okay.
So whether you were completing the development like a preclinical, clinical, or you were, that didn't matter, but it was a very single project specific financing. And then the financing was also inconsistent, in the sense they didn't know how to interpret model, and we were at the mercy of certain bureaucrats on those committees. So I mean, although I must say I got big grants from the government of India over the years. In total, Avesthagen has raised almost 140 million euros. In private equity must be about 60% or is 55%, and the rest came from grants, large grants, and also from debt and licensing, partnering, the partnering model. And yeah, so sometimes I find the traditional systems of grant giving in India are not conducive. While when I got grants from overseas, they were brilliantly run, well done. Even my interactions with the partners, because ultimately those partners were also funding your develop R&D, right? All in, and all those R&D partners, beautiful management. But with terms of Indian partners and Indian systems and Indian grants, always heartburning issues, you see. And I faced a lot of difficulties managing it in India. I have to, you asked me to be candid. And so we have to be candid if we want to make changes. And so it was, whether it were business partners or, grant funders, I was the odd man out, odd woman out, shall I say. I was an oddity in some ways, so to fit in, that was very difficult to your way of speaking, their way of understanding. But India is changing also now, because I was recently at this one conference where government has announced for fundamental research. And I said, well, finally it has arrived after 25 years of struggling and fighting and beating it out, is that you have somebody now putting down 100,000 crores, 100,000 crores, mind you, R&D, pure R&D. Tinkering is not allowed in it, in that funding.
Is that sector specific or sector agnostic? What when we talk about
sector agnostic, it is of course in space, defense, biotech, life science, IT, AI, ML, all that stuff in it, anything. But it has to be innovation, pure innovation, and that is, wow, finally it has arrived. Because so now the government is saying, hey, we don't want all those generic characters in this game, and it is only for true innovators. And it is being managed like an innovation entity, that full fund is being given to private equity to run the show. It's a fund of funds. Okay. And of course, so that has been announced recently. It's called RDI funding, research, development, innovation. So it's big. So you can dream and create something proper here. So, but it's being going to be managed by private equity and by certain government bodies like TDB and BIRAC.
Well, that's quite interesting. I didn't know it personally. I'm sure a lot of people didn't, but it's interesting to see India taking these leaps. So, I also wanted to understand a little bit more about the Avesthagen project. I read that the project focuses on a Parsi population as an ideal genomics cohort. Firstly, could you talk a little bit more about what the project is? And secondly, what made the Parsi community uniquely valuable for a large-scale genomic study like this?
So, a holding entity, there are subsidiaries in it, under it, which do carry out different pieces of work. The Avesta Genome Project created in 2007 for which was it basically, it's about the Parsi Zoroastrian community, because they were on the brink of extinction, shall I say. We are very, very few left. I'm talking of that line that came from Iran in the 8th century. Of course, there are different types of Parsi who are marrying out and, children and all, but that, shall we say, that line that inbred for 1300 years in India and form a very endogamous group. They are almost, endogamous. And so that became a reason. One is that they were going, I mean, it was extinguishing, it was endangered. So we have to record the existence of this community, archive it. Otherwise, it'll be gone. That angle, their blood. So that one combined with an opportunity for drug discovery, because as you know, when you're searching for biomarkers in a heterogeneous population, it's difficult to find quickly what you're looking for. So this was a approach that endogamy means backgrounds are very similar, the noise is less, to achieve finding novel biomarkers becomes that much easier than a heterogeneous population. So we began that in 07, 08. The collection went down for 5 years, and it was a multi-omics population and collection. And the work began around 019 because we spent, we had to organize everything. So it's a biobank. At this moment, the precision drug discovery or therapy discovering opportunity. And what we are doing is we are finishing the sequencing of the 4,700 being collected and converting that data into meaningful outcomes. So, and we've done one project on lung cancer in the past where we use the population for control group because they don't smoke to come up with lung cancer signatures, predictive lung cancer signature before the onset of the disease. So various ways this population can be used in the future. And the biobank is very critical, and the data. So we are slowly converting even Avesthagen. I mean, I told you about the planetary science model, converting everything into data. So 25 years of data of all organisms going to be, put into a large data set, as well as the Parsi genome, the human genome data information. And that will become a queryable data set from which we would go all the way in silico to drug discovery. And so that's the model.
And you mentioned the term biobank. What is the extent to which this biobank currently in India encapsulates different communities or say different types of individuals? And where are we lacking if you compare it to global standards and other countries?
You see, these kind of biobanks don't exist really, right? Except in the UK. And even US is also very specific to a certain smaller group and all that. This basic collection, the UK is much more advanced with the Genomics England. And in India, they have just started entering biobank. When you talk about what we have done, where we have collected per person 7 tubes for multi-omics, genome, proteome, transcriptome, metabolome, and for stem cells, and and 60 pages of data per person. It's a very thorough piece of work that needs to be done. It's just starting. People are just starting their own biobanks, and the government of India has to take a call on what they plan to do with biobanks. And even I think today, I mean, I'm talking to like IISc, we have a joint longevity project. They are creating a biobank on longevity with us. What I see in the last year, if people have done, is basically created an ecosystem of partnerships, first with academia in top institutes. Let's not waste time is too short. And then you go into the other side of corporates. Of course, corporates will be mostly international because Indian, as you know, Indian pharma or Indian food does not have any, how shall I, gumption, for lack of terminology, to get into our kind of work. You need to be mad or something to do this.
Of course. Of course, given the gestation cycles, Indian appetite for high risk projects has been very low. Of course, that changes.
Let us just talk corporate. Segregate the government. Government is getting there.
Yeah,
corporates are not.
Okay.
Corporates are not. I mean, they're still wary of doing high tech research, or they go out and buy some company out there in the West, which never really delivers. I've seen this approach also.
Right. So in your sector, is there any fundamental problem? I've seen longevity as a problem statement has recently sort of popped up, and there are, I would say, startups, and there is massive funding being funneled into this problem statement. Other than longevity, are there any other problem statements that you see are becoming or getting more traction, more funding, more eyeballs?
Yeah, I think one is, of course, cancers is there. I mean, cancer is getting its funding. It is very important, and it is in the longevity spec. It's a buzzword, and it's health span. How do you manage a healthy span of life. Nobody is sudden unless you do those. So it's about improving health span and keeping wellness. The wellness feeds into it. That, our preventive healthcare, what we have already built, feeds into the longevity chain, actually. So that is a separate. The other one is neurodegeneration is going to be a huge thing, which starting from Parkinson's, Alzheimer's to dementia, as people health span improves, the mental span also has to improve or stay put. So that is, these are all running parallel, actually, if you go to see. And then there's this whole spectrum of autoimmune conditions, because of the kind of lifestyle and the food habits and all that, autoimmune conditions are becoming more high expressed. That is actually the metabolic syndrome in some words. And that's where outcomes of the Avesthagen Genome Project and outcomes we should focus. I mean, I would like to focus, once my data digitalization is complete, into understanding the networks, pathways, biological pathways, chemistries, metabolomes in the pathways play a role, and connectivity between these odd, disparate disease conditions, but they are connected. In the other words, for example, autoimmune conditions, starting from compulsive obsessive behavior right down to IBS, to colon cancer, to Parkinson's, they all have pathways that are interlinked in. So that's where I want to focus on with the data that I have. So yeah, these are the areas: neurobiology, neurodegeneration, longevity associated health span conditions, autoimmune conditions, and rare diseases are it's increasing in number. And so that's another area.
Last segment which I wanted to cover is that, could we understand the economics of it? How is the revenue model currently operating? Do you earn a majority of the revenue currently from IPs, again, licensing IPs, etc.? Again, as you mentioned, there is a component of funding involved. What does that look like? And when you're talking about profitability in biotech, what does it mean?
See, there are three models in how you monetize your work. One is licensing, as we already said. But these licensing models, you have to have a huge network, you have to run around the world, and you have to partner. And then you have to take 9 months to 12 months to build those partnerships. And they may fall at the very nth minute also. Okay, huge risk involved. So you carry on with that. That has to be done. So we keep making these. But the whole preventive, I mean, in our case, there have to be products that can easily go into the market with partners. So we have the preventive healthcare pipelines, which are supplements, functional foods, functional ingredients, B2B, B2C, that we are programming to enter the market. Now, to enter the market also is a huge funding requirement. I mean, you can't just take up marketing. You have to build the teams, you have to bring in the people and all that. And I had done all that, mind you. It was already done in that '08 cycle. So now again, to restart that, it would be what I've decided is we partner even there. You find big giants who don't have such products, and you tell them, okay, you market it for us, we hold the IP, we keep the manufacturing with us, we outsource the manufacturing, because these are all science-based products, and building those models. But the initial money is trickling in are also very small, because to build that setup, it takes at least 24 months to get a flow that is significant. Not 5 months, 6 months. If you expect, you have to make sure people are aware of your product and all that. But that's up to the other company to do that. The third model is, of course, is to sell off certain assets you don't need in the pipeline. Like, for example, today, for me, the data is the most important story, like all my 25 years, because enormous potential to do synthetic biology on that data. I mean, I can query it and say, hey, I want to build X product. Tell me what I have in my mixture. And it can pick up from marine algae data to human data and give me a story, which I can put into mode, you know. So that is my key today asset, which I would, and the Avesthagen Genome Project, digitalization of 25 years of work, as well as this Avesthagen Genome. And we drive the new entities from there while we monetize with the preventive healthcare with partners and also testing, genetic testing with partners. So these two go into retail format while the genome and the data continue on their big story, the next wave. And the third one is certain assets which we don't need anymore. I mean, they're not part of this larger story. We shed it, we sell it, and monetize. So this is a model I know most people of a certain size will look into,
Okay.
merger acquisitions, partnerships, licensing, while keeping all data intact within with huge security firewalls.
Right. And having one line of monetizable products, keeping on, which gives you your revenue.
Yeah, that is what it is. But let me also say, these are all, I mean, these are the path we are taking now. But there's always need of funding to even, there is something called debris of innovation.
Yeah.
Debris of innovation, when you sculpt a beautiful statue,
Yeah.
there are all the pieces around it which need sweeping off.
Yeah.
And that has to be done. So for that, you need a certain, new funding coming in. Wipe out your slate of old shareholders who are just hanging in, they pay them and let them go. So restructuring is another big bit I'm doing at the moment.
Okay.
Is, forming I don't want to, I'll say Avesthagen will remain because there are a lot of the options, do this, let this lead, let that. No, that's the story. It has undergone a big journey. So we're raising a fund now at the moment for post restructuring to drive all these things out. It's the cleanup of the debris of innovation and the cap table, because there are a lot of people on the cap, which we need to simplify. So the next 3 years is all about this, and then again, go back to the listing mode 3 years from now. That is the way I'm looking at it.
Wow, that sounds very interesting. I'm looking forward to tracking the journey. And the last question, Dr. Patel, your thought of what India needs to do if it needs to become a biotech and genomics powerhouse, say in the next 20 years?
Capital, of course, I think India is ambitious, okay? This whole 2047 story, Vikshit Bharat, but it's not percolating down to actual action, So this RDI fund was the first time I saw that, man, they are serious now, kind of thing. Otherwise, there are these hundreds of conferences taking place, Vikshit Bharat and all that. But when I see the speakers and what they're saying is so unconnected with what needs to be done. I mean, the vision has to be played out, the big, what it is, what we are talking, what the modern biotech life science looks like, where the tech has to integrate and with us. Now, if I go and talk to IT company, the best of the best, they think I'm talking Greek and Latin many times. And, so that integration is yet to happen. It's not there. Everybody is looking for that next, how much profit I will make.
Yeah.
That is the mentality even today. So when you, this question of yours, Avesthagen doesn't look like a typical biotech or consumer company. How do you define the business model in one sentence? This is it. You see, cannot be stymied in by what's the profit?
Yeah.
So I am a consumer company. I am a pharmaceutical company. I am a diagnostic company. I am an agriculture company, climate change.
Right.
We are all of that. But it was driven by innovation. It was about delivering something novel, for God's sake, And that the journey has been that much tough. And I say India is ambitious, but so there are two serious capital and ambition in place. Now, execution is another matter altogether. And I think, what was the third one you said? The third ambition, capital, and policy. The policy, there should be no policy on this. I mean, in innovation, they cannot stymie us. I've spent 50% of my time last 10 years fighting it out with the system. The system puts a biotech life science company with the guys who make steel rods, laws up, the same law, the same taxation, the same nonsense. I mean, hey, this is R&D. Why are you punishing me for doing something like this? So this that's the policy. Get us out of the system. Do not. And if we are still in the system because we were so early and in our vision, don't punish us. We are
Yeah.
being punished.
Yeah.
Early innovation and early vision is being punished because they have not segregated the systems for both parties.
Yeah.
I mean, until the product commercializes, you cannot put taxes on this. Even if I get tomorrow 10 million from somebody on an R&D deal, it's all into R&D. What am I making as only overheads?
Fair.
Why should I be taxed on that and punished? I mean, this has to change. I mean, this really, the whole system. If you really want India to burgeon up, it's possible. We've got all the mix. I tell you, it's all there. Nothing is missing here. It's policy, capital, ambition is there too, very much. Everyone is ambitious, but we get stuck in policy and we get stuck in financing.
So blanket policy making has been, or blanket structures and blanket processes has been a problem. And I would say, like you mentioned, the components are in piece, are in place. Somebody just needs to bring them together, and of course, reduce the inertia and reduce the chaos by making suited policies for sub-segments within a larger biotech field.
Exactly.
So
That has to happen. Yeah.
let,
Yeah. Right.
let's
So where is all this going to be said and done?
I'll just close this. So firstly, thank you so much for doing this. It's an honor speaking to you. Hopefully everybody will be tracking Avesthagen very, very closely and the journey you're taking. And hopefully this piques interest for a lot of young folks who are looking at various career options, various options in the field. This is a great place to be. This is a very complex problem to solve and a very grassroots problem to solve for a better India and a better world. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
that.
Well, not at all. Thank you.